Stop! Please don't hit him again! I screamed, my voice bouncing off the granite countertops, slicing through the smell of roasted coffee and lemon cleaner hanging in the air. My chest felt tight, like a fist was closing around my lungs. For a split second, the whole kitchen seemed to freeze. Melissa turned slowly, the wooden spoon still trembling in her hand. Drops of tomato sauce splattered on the pristine white tile like blood. Her eyes, usually calm and sharp as polished glass, flared with something darker. "Claire, you need to stay out of this," she hissed. But I couldn't look away from Ethan. My little boy was crumpled on the floor, his cheeks wet. His small arms curled around his head like he was trying to shield himself from a storm. His Spider-Man t-shirt was spotted with red sauce, and just under his collar, a thin welt was blooming, angry and pink. My heart dropped into my stomach. I took a shaky step forward, feeling the tremor in my own knees. "Melissa, he's 5. You can't." He poured juice all over my floors and laughed, she snapped, her voice cracking like a whip. "He's disrespectful. He needs discipline. Not your soft, coddling nonsense." I felt the world tilt under my feet. Melissa wasn't just my older sister. She'd been the golden child our whole lives. The straight A student, the polished teacher with a perfect reputation in our Portland suburb. The one who could charm neighbors, pastors, even cops, with a single practiced smile. But right now, standing over my child, she looked monstrous. I knelt beside Ethan, my fingers trembling as I brushed a tear off his cheek. "It's okay, baby. Mommy's here," I whispered. But my voice cracked. He looked up at me, eyes glassy, voice trembling. "I'm sorry, Mommy. I'll be good. Please don't let Auntie hit me." Something in me snapped so clean it felt like glass shattering. This wasn't just about a spilled cup of juice. This was about me. All those nights when I was Ethan's age, trying to convince myself I deserved the slap across the face, the bruises hidden under long sleeves. This was about secrets my family had always called discipline. Melissa lowered the spoon, shaking her head like I was being dramatic. "You're blowing this out of proportion. Claire, kids need boundaries. You let him run wild, and look where it's gotten you living in my house because you can't handle life alone." The words hit me like icy water. Shame, anger, helplessness. After my divorce, I'd lost almost everything. Ethan and I had been sleeping on friends' couches before Melissa offered her guest room, and I'd thought maybe this was my second chance. Now my second chance felt like a cage. I rose slowly, standing between my son and my sister, my voice trembling but loud. "I won't let you touch him again." Melissa rolled her eyes, crossing her arms, the spoon still clutched like a weapon. "He's a brat because you made him soft. Don't come crying to me when he ends up a criminal because you couldn't teach him respect." Her words stabbed deep, each one dredging up old wounds I thought I'd buried. I scooped Ethan into my arms. He flinched as my hand brushed his shoulder. That single movement made something dark and cold settle in my chest. My eyes met Melissa's. For a long, silent moment, I could almost see the two of us as kids again, her towering over me, the same coldness in her eyes, telling me not to be so dramatic, that bruises were just love taps. But this time, I wasn't a scared little girl anymore. I held my son tighter and felt the truth pulsing through every beat of my heart. I couldn't stay here, even if it meant losing everything all over again. Melissa's voice cut the air like a blade. "You think I'm the bad guy?" she yelled, waving the spoon so fiercely a drop of sauce flung across the countertop and landed on Ethan's cheek. He flinched so hard he nearly fell backward, smacking his elbow against a cabinet. A thin wail escaped him, soft and trembling. "Stop it!" I shouted, my own voice echoing in my ears. "You're scaring him." Melissa closed the space between us in 2 strides, her face inches from mine, her breath sharp with coffee and rage. You let him get away with everything. Claire, you're weak, and look at you living off me like a damn charity case, and still telling me how to run my house. My hands were trembling so badly I almost dropped Ethan. He buried his face in my shoulder, muffling sobs against my shirt. Melissa pointed the spoon at him like an accusation. He laughed while dumping orange juice all over my clean floors. That's disrespect. Claire, you think a little swat is child abuse? Give me a break. But I couldn't think of juice. I couldn't think of floors. All I could see was the welt on my son's skin. You hit him, Melissa. You left a mark, she scoffed, turning away. Better a mark now than him growing up thinking he can act however he wants. The way she said it so cold, so casual, made something tighten around my ribs like a vice. Ethan whimpered into my ear. I'll be good. Mommy, please don't let Auntie hit me again. His voice was so small, so heartbreakingly desperate, that my knees almost buckled. Melissa threw her arms up. Oh my God, Claire, stop dramatizing. You act like I beat him bloody. He needs consequences. That's how we were raised, and we turned out fine. No, we didn't turn out fine. Suddenly memories crashed over me like a tidal wave. I was 7, huddled behind the couch as Mom screamed at me for dropping a plate. I could still feel the heat of the slap across my face. I remembered Melissa watching from the stairs, silent, smug, learning the rules of survival. I blinked hard, trying to stay in the present, but the kitchen around me seemed to tilt and sway. Melissa stalked closer again, her voice lowering, almost a growl. Do you know how hard it is for me? I work all day with 30 kids who talk back, and then I come home to this little brat wrecking my house. I don't need your judgment on top of it. The spoon slapped onto the counter with a loud clack, making Ethan jump and whimper. I wrapped my arms tighter around him, feeling the way his small body shook against mine. Melissa, you're scaring him, I whispered. I don't care, she snapped. He needs to learn respect. You want to raise a criminal? Fine, don't blame me when he's in juvie at 16. A hot wave of rage washed over me. How dare you talk about my son like that? She glared at me, her face twisted with contempt. You can't even keep your own life together. A failed marriage, no money, living in my house, and you think you know how to parent. I sucked in a breath so sharp it hurt my chest. Melissa's words were knives, slicing open all my insecurities, the court battles, the lawyer bills, the nights Ethan and I slept in a friend's basement because I couldn't afford rent. My vision blurred. But then Ethan's trembling voice broke through the chaos. Mommy, I'm sorry. I won't spill juice again. I pulled back just enough to look into his eyes. His sweet brown eyes were clouded with terror. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just about discipline. This was about fear. About my little boy learning to shrink into himself so he wouldn't be hit. About him believing that pain was love. That silence was safety. No, not my son. Melissa kept ranting, pacing the floor like a caged animal. Kids are spoiled these days. Everybody wants to talk about gentle parenting. But look at society, falling apart. I'm not raising a snowflake. I'm raising a man. I swallowed hard, feeling bile in my throat. You're hurting him. You're hurting me. She stopped pacing and fixed me with an icy stare. You're weak, Claire. Always have been. That's why your husband left you. You couldn't handle real life. A tear slipped down my cheek. I wiped it away with the back of my shaking hand. That's enough, I said softly. But Melissa wasn't done. She lunged forward, grabbing Ethan's arm so hard he cried out. Melissa, let go of him. I wrenched Ethan away, and he tumbled into me, sobbing, burying his face in my chest. Melissa stood there, panting, hair falling out of her neat bun, eyes wild. I held Ethan so close I could feel his heartbeat slamming against my ribs. I looked at Melissa and realized something terrifying. I didn't know who she was anymore. Or maybe I finally did. That night, the house felt colder than usual. The kitchen lights were off, shadows crawling across the floor like dark fingers. I sat at the dining room table, the wood cool under my palms, staring into a mug of coffee I couldn't bring myself to drink. Ethan was upstairs, finally asleep after sobbing until his breath came in ragged hiccups. I kept replaying the look in his eyes, the way he'd whispered that he'd be good, like he thought all of this was his fault. I heard the soft creak of footsteps, then the shuffling sound of my mother's slippers. Martha Watson moved into the doorway, folding her arms, her silk robe cinched tightly around her small frame. "Claire, we need to talk." Her voice was low, almost gentle, but I knew that tone. I'd grown up with that tone. The one she used right before telling me how I'd embarrassed her in front of the neighbors, or how my tears were making a scene. I lifted my gaze, trying to keep my voice even. "Mom, she hit him. I saw it." Mom sighed, pulling out the chair across from me. She sat down, smoothing the robe across her knees, her gold wedding ring glinting under the overhead light. "Claire, you're always so dramatic." My jaw tightened. "He's 5 years old. Mom, that's not discipline. That's abuse." She waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, stop. It was a spoon. Claire, not a baseball bat." My heart thudded painfully against my ribs. I saw the welt on his back. He's terrified of her. He keeps apologizing for everything. Mom shook her head, frowning. "He needs to learn respect. Melissa didn't mean to hurt him. She just lost her temper. She's under a lot of pressure at work." I slammed my palm on the table so hard the mug rattled. "I don't care how stressed she is, that doesn't give her the right to hit my son." Mom flinched at my outburst, her eyes narrowing. "Lower your voice, you'll wake Ethan." The mention of his name sent a wave of fresh pain crashing through me. Mom leaned forward, her voice softer now, like she was reasoning with a stubborn child. "Claire, think about this. Melissa is a teacher. If you report her, she could lose her job. Her whole life would be destroyed over what one little spanking." I swallowed hard, my throat burning. It wasn't just one, and it wasn't little. And even if it was she, hit him. Mom sighed deeply, pressing her fingers to her temples. "You don't understand what it takes to keep a family together. You've always been so sensitive. You read too many books. You let your feelings run wild." My eyes stung as old memories rose up like ghosts. Mom glaring at me as I cried after being slapped. Mom telling me to toughen up when Melissa shoved me down the stairs. Mom insisting it was just sibling rivalry. A tiny voice in my head whispered that I was being overdramatic, that maybe Mom was right. But then I saw Ethan's face again, and all the doubt burned away. I met Mom's eyes, my voice trembling but firm. "I'm not going to let her hurt him again." Mom's face hardened, her lips pressing into a thin line. "You'd ruin your sister's entire future. Over this, Melissa has worked so hard for everything she has. You know how difficult it is for her being a single woman in her 30s, trying to keep a teaching job. Do you want to see her lose her house? Her reputation." I stared at her, disbelief tightening my chest. "Do you even care about Ethan?" Her gaze flickered. For the briefest second, I thought I saw shame there, but it vanished just as quickly. "He's a child. Claire, he'll get over it." My mouth dropped open. He wakes up crying in the middle of the night. He's terrified of his own aunt. Mom exhaled sharply, rubbing her forehead. "You've always been so exhausting. Claire, everything's a crisis with you. No wonder your marriage fell apart." My stomach lurched as if she'd slapped me. She kept going, relentless. "You have no job, no savings. You're staying here out of charity. And you're going to risk losing the only place you and that boy have to live over your pride." Tears burned hot behind my eyes. "This isn't about pride. This is about keeping my son safe." Mom slammed her hand on the table this time, leaning in close. "You call the police. You'll destroy this family. Melissa will lose everything. People will talk. The neighbors, the church. You think you can handle that? You think you're ready to be the one who blows this family apart? I stared at her, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. I'd rather blow this family apart than let him grow up thinking love equals pain. Silence stretched between us, heavy as stone. Mom's eyes glittered under the kitchen light. "You'll regret this," she said finally, her voice icy. I pushed back my chair, my legs trembling as I stood. The only thing I'll regret is not protecting my son. And for the first time in my life, I turned my back on my mother and didn't feel guilty. The moon hung high and cold outside the bedroom window, its light slicing across the floor in silver ribbons. I sat on the edge of the narrow twin bed, staring at the cracked paint on the walls, listening to Ethan's soft, uneven breathing. He'd finally drifted off, clutching his Spider-Man blanket so tightly his little knuckles were white. Even in sleep, his brows were furrowed like he was bracing for another blow. A single thought throbbed in my head, over and over. I have to get him out. I tried to silence it, tried to imagine staying, to pretend Melissa's rage would just stop, to believe Mom's empty promises that everything would blow over if I just kept my mouth shut. But I couldn't erase the memory of that welt on Ethan's skin, or the way he'd whispered, "I'll be good, Mommy," like he thought he deserved pain. My vision blurred with tears. I pressed the heel of my palm against my chest, trying to steady my racing heart. It felt like standing on a cliff, staring down into black water, not knowing if I'd sink or swim. My phone buzzed. A new text from Melissa. "We need to talk. You're blowing this out of proportion." I'm sorry it got out of hand. My fingers tightened around the phone so hard I thought the plastic might crack. Sorry it got out of hand. That was all she had to say. I closed my eyes, forcing my breath to come slow and even. I thought of Ethan's tiny voice, shaking as he begged me to protect him. No more. I rose from the bed, my legs feeling like they were made of water. I grabbed the only suitcase I owned, dragging it out from under the bed. I packed in silence. Ethan's clothes, my clothes, toothbrushes, his favorite green cup with the dinosaur sticker peeling off. I glanced at the closet. My wedding dress was still hanging there, shoved in the back behind boxes. For a moment, I stared at the silk fabric, thinking of the promises it once meant. Then I slammed the closet door shut. I moved quietly, stuffing our lives into garbage bags because there weren't enough suitcases for the pieces of us. Halfway through packing, Ethan stirred. He blinked at me sleepily, rubbing his eyes. "Mommy, why are you putting my clothes in bags?" I swallowed past the lump in my throat. "Baby, we're going on an adventure." His lower lip trembled. Are we going to be homeless again?" My chest cracked open like glass. I dropped to my knees, cupping his small face in my shaking hands. No, baby. We're going to be safe. I promise." Tears rolled down his cheeks. "I don't want Auntie to hurt me." My voice broke. She never will again. Outside the room, a floorboard creaked. I froze, listening to footsteps approaching. The bedroom door flew open, slamming against the wall. Mom stood there, her robe clutched tight, eyes sharp as shards of ice. "What are you doing?" I stood tall, even though my heart felt like it was shriveling in my chest. "I'm leaving." Mom's eyes widened, her mouth working soundlessly for a moment. Then her voice dropped to a vicious hiss. "You are not taking that boy out of this house in the middle of the night. Do you want to end up on the street again? Do you want to humiliate us even more than you already have?" I felt Ethan press himself into my leg, shaking. "I'd rather sleep under a bridge than spend one more night in this house." I shot back. Mom stepped closer, her finger stabbing the air between us. "You're making a mistake. You're broke, Claire. You have nothing. You think the world is just going to help you because you cry abuse. People will judge you. They'll call you crazy. You'll lose Ethan. You'll lose everything. My voice was trembling, but I forced it out anyway. The only thing I'd lose is my soul if I stayed here. Mom's eyes narrowed, her voice dropping to a cold, calm whisper. If you walk out that door, don't bother coming back. Don't come crying when you're sleeping in a shelter. When your son's taken by child services because you can't provide for him. Because I won't help you. I felt Ethan stiffen, clutching my hand so tight his little nails dug into my skin. I don't want your help. I whispered, I just want my son safe. Mom's eyes shimmered with a fury so intense it felt like heat radiating off her skin. I should have known. You've always been the difficult one, the dramatic one. You're just like your father. Selfish. I stared at her, the words no longer even stinging. Because I'd finally stopped caring. I scooped Ethan into my arms, grabbed the bags, and pushed past my mother. Ignoring her, gasped protests. In the hallway, Melissa appeared in a t-shirt and sweatpants, eyes red and puffy. Claire, please, don't do this. Her voice cracked. She reached out, fingers trembling. I'm sorry. I've been so stressed. I didn't mean to hurt him. Her tears glittered under the hallway light. But I didn't see a sister anymore. I saw a threat. I shifted Ethan higher on my hip, my voice flat and cold. You can be sorry all you want, but you're never coming near my son again. Melissa's face crumpled as I pushed open the front door. The cold Portland air hit me like a slap. Mom called after me one last time. You're making a mistake. Claire, don't come crying when you're homeless again. I didn't look back, because for the first time in years, I felt free. The motel smelled like bleach and sadness. The neon vacancy sign outside buzzed softly, casting pale red light through dusty blinds, flickering in and out like a dying heartbeat. I set the garbage bags down in the corner of the small room. The walls were stained with years of cigarette smoke. The carpet, a strange patchwork of browns and faded blues. Ethan stood silently beside me, gripping his green dinosaur cup, his eyes huge in his pale face. Is this our new house? Mommy, he asked, his voice so quiet I almost missed it. I knelt down in front of him, brushing his hair back from his forehead. It's just a stop on our adventure, baby. He stared at the stained bedspread, then up at me, hope and fear warring in his eyes. Are we safe here? A lump formed in my throat. Yeah, sweetheart, we're safe. I didn't mention the roaches I'd seen scurrying under the dresser when I turned the lights on. Or the man outside yelling into a payphone, his voice thick with anger and desperation. That first night, we huddled in the twin bed. Ethan curled into a tight ball beside me. I could feel every tremor in his small body. The mattress squeaked with every breath. Outside, tires screeched in the distance. Somewhere, a siren wailed. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to Ethan mumble in his sleep. Don't let Auntie hit me. I'll be good. Each word drove a knife deeper into my chest. I wanted to cry, scream, shatter the entire world into pieces for ever letting this happen. But I forced myself to stay silent. Because right then, silence was the only armor I had left. By morning, I had exactly $317 in my checking account. I couldn't afford to stay in the motel more than a week. So I put Ethan's Spider-Man coloring book in front of him on the tiny table in the corner, kissed his hair, and whispered, I'll be right back. Okay. Then I hit the streets of Portland, desperate for anything that would keep us afloat. I applied at coffee shops, grocery stores, diners, anywhere that didn't require experience or a clean credit check. Most of them barely looked at my application. A few managers gave me that pitying look, the one that said, single mom, living in a motel, must be a mess. I swallowed my pride again and again. 2 days in, I finally landed a job stocking shelves on the overnight shift at a 24-hour grocery store. It was minimum wage. My feet ached until they were raw. And I smelled like cardboard dust and stale produce every morning. But it was honest. At dawn, I'd come back to the motel, exhausted, and collapse beside Ethan while he colored in the motel Bible with blue and green crayons. One morning, after another endless shift, Ethan crawled into my lap, his voice muffled against my chest. I dreamed Auntie came and took me away. My arms tightened around him. "She's never gonna touch you again, baby, I promise." But at night, doubts clawed at me. Was I really strong enough to do this alone? What if Mom was right? What if CPS took him because I couldn't provide a stable home? Each time the thought tried to take root, I shoved it away. Because I knew the truth, staying with Melissa would have been the real danger. 2 weeks in, I found a flyer at a laundromat about remote transcription work. I practically ran back to the motel to borrow the front desk's ancient computer. I tested out, passed the typing speed requirements, and started taking low-paying jobs transcribing court depositions. It wasn't much, but between grocery shifts and transcription, I was scraping together just enough to keep us fed. Meanwhile, I was documenting everything. I took photos of the welt on Ethan's back, screenshots of Melissa's apology texts, recordings of Ethan talking in his sleep about the bad spoon. I stored it all in a hidden folder on a flash drive I kept around my neck. Some nights, when Ethan finally drifted off, I'd sit alone in the dark, listening to him breathe, and wonder how my life had turned into this. But then I'd remind myself, I wasn't just running away anymore. I was building something. At the grocery store, I met a woman named Tanya who stocked dairy with me. She noticed my shaking hands one night as I loaded milk into the cooler. "Rough week," she asked, wiping sweat off her brow. I forced a shaky laugh. "More like a rough life." Something in my voice must have tipped her off. Tanya leaned closer, voice low. "You ever hear of the Safe Families Network? They help moms get legal advice, counseling, even safe housing sometimes. People who've been through stuff like this." I blinked at her, trying not to burst into tears right there among the yogurt cartons. "Does it cost anything?" "Nope. They help women get back on their feet, and they don't judge." That night, I called the hotline from the payphone outside the motel, clutching the receiver so hard my fingers went numb. A woman named Deborah picked up. Her voice was calm and gentle, like warm tea on a winter day. She listened while I poured everything out. About Melissa, about Mom, about the motel. When I finally fell silent, she said, "Claire, you're stronger than you know, and you're making the right choices." For the first time in weeks, I let myself believe her, and somewhere deep inside, I felt the first flicker of hope. 2 days after my call with Deborah, I was sitting on the edge of the motel bed, Ethan curled up asleep beside me, when my phone buzzed. An unknown number flashed on the cracked screen. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. Every instinct screamed at me to ignore it. But something told me this call mattered. So I answered. A woman's voice came on the line, steady but gentle. "Miss Watson, this is Jennifer Miller from Child Protective Services. We received an anonymous tip regarding possible physical abuse involving your son, Ethan." The walls seemed to close in around me. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I thought they were calling to take him away. My voice came out as a rasp. I didn't call you. But, yes, my sister hit my son. I have proof. Jennifer spoke softly, as if afraid I'd hang up. "Would you be willing to meet and share what you have? We're not here to take Ethan unless we believe he's unsafe. We're here to protect him." Tears spilled down my cheeks before I even realized I was crying. "Yes, please. I want to report everything." We arranged to meet the next day at the Safe Families Network office downtown. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ethan flinching away from Melissa's raised hand, and I heard my mother's voice warning me I'd destroy the family. But I knew one thing: the only way out was through. At the meeting, I sat across from Jennifer in a tiny room that smelled like coffee and copy paper. Ethan played quietly in the corner, stacking plastic blocks. My hands trembled as I slid the flash drive across the table. Jennifer plugged it into her laptop and began scrolling through photos of Ethan's bruises, screenshots of Melissa's texts, audio files of Ethan whispering about the bad spoon. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Claire, this is serious evidence. Thank you for bringing this forward." A tiny piece of me cracked open, relief rushing in like warm water. For the first time, someone believed me. That same week, a court hearing was scheduled. Melissa was served with a summons. 2 days before the hearing, I got an email from Melissa. Claire, please don't do this. You know how hard my job is. I didn't mean to hurt Ethan. You're blowing this out of proportion. Think about Mom. Think about our family." I forwarded the email to Jennifer without replying. But the real twist came the night before the hearing. My phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. This time it was Melissa's lawyer. "Ms. Watson, I'm calling as a courtesy. Melissa is prepared to testify that you're emotionally unstable, that you've been acting irrationally since your divorce, that you're fabricating these allegations to punish your sister." I felt my blood turn to ice. He kept talking, his tone oily. "You know, the court tends to believe the parent with the stable job and home. Are you sure you want to go through with this? It might reflect badly on you, and on your ability to keep custody of Ethan." My grip tightened on the phone so hard my fingers went numb. My voice came out barely above a whisper. "Tell Melissa I'll see her in court." The line went dead. The next morning, I stood outside the courthouse, clutching Ethan's hand. He wore his best clothes, a little collared shirt and khaki pants. I wore a thrift store blazer and the steeliest expression I could muster. Melissa arrived 10 minutes late, wearing pearls and a crisp navy dress. Her eyes were red, but her mouth was set in a thin, determined line. Mom came too, trailing behind her like a silent shadow. She didn't look at me. Inside the courtroom, the fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair, peered down at us from the bench. Melissa's lawyer rose first. "Your Honor, my client regrets losing her temper, but the petitioner has a documented history of anxiety and emotional instability following a difficult divorce. We believe she's overreacting and endangering her son's stability by manufacturing these claims." My stomach churned as he flipped through papers, glancing over his glasses at me like I was a nuisance. Then my lawyer stood. "Your Honor, we have medical records documenting Ethan's injuries. We have photographs, text messages, and an audio recording of the child expressing fear of his aunt. My client has gone above and beyond to protect her child." He paused, glancing my way with quiet strength. "And we have a statement from Ethan's pediatrician, who confirms these injuries were not accidental." The judge leaned forward. "Ms. Watson, do you wish to say anything?" I stood slowly, knees trembling. My sister hurt my son. She left welts on his body, and my mother told me to stay quiet to protect the family. I can't. Not anymore. I spent my whole life believing that silence kept us safe. But it doesn't. It just lets the pain keep happening. My voice broke, but I kept going. I'm not trying to ruin anyone's life. I'm trying to save my son's. From the corner of my eye, I saw Melissa staring at me, eyes wide, her carefully constructed mask starting to crack. Mom looked like she wanted to sink through the floor. The judge's gavel came down with a sharp crack. Based on the evidence presented, I'm issuing a restraining order. Melissa Harris is not to have any contact with Ethan Watson, nor with Ms. Claire Watson, until further notice. This court further recommends reporting this incident to the school board for review. Melissa gasped, clutching the edge of the table. "No, please, my job." But the judge's gaze was implacable. This court's priority is the safety of the child. As the bailiff escorted us out, Mom finally looked at me. "You've destroyed your sister's life," she whispered, voice shaking. I stared her dead in the eye. No, she did that to herself. And for the first time in my life, I felt strong. 1 year later, the leaves were turning gold and orange in Portland, crisp underfoot as Ethan and I walked hand in hand toward our apartment building. The air smelled of rain and coffee beans drifting from a nearby cafe. Ethan wore a navy jacket 2 sizes too big, his backpack bouncing against his shoulders. He was chattering nonstop about his new friend, Lucas, and how they were planning to build the biggest Lego city in the universe. For the first time in a long time, I was smiling for real. Our new place wasn't fancy. A 1-bedroom apartment above a bookstore with a leaky faucet and squeaky floors. But it was ours. No more whispering so we wouldn't wake someone. No more counting pennies in secret. No more fear waiting for footsteps in the hallway. Ethan burst through the door, dumping his backpack by the couch. "Mom, can I paint the mailbox red?" I laughed, shaking my head. "Sure, buddy. Let's make it the brightest mailbox on the whole block." He grinned so wide I thought his face might split in two. Every time I looked at him, I saw the difference. He still flinched sometimes when he heard loud voices, or when a belt snapped on TV. But he laughed again. He sang silly songs while brushing his teeth. He wasn't afraid to fall asleep alone. And that felt like a miracle. I'd found a job at the local library, managing the children's section. Books were my sanctuary. They always had been. Each morning, I'd unlock the door, switch on the lights, and breathe in the warm, papery scent of possibility. Kids came in, dragging parents behind them, squealing over colorful covers, and every time I shelved a book or led story time, I felt like I was planting tiny seeds of hope. One Tuesday, as I was reorganizing a shelf of battered fairy tales, I looked up and froze. Mom was standing in the doorway. She was smaller than I remembered, wrapped in a pale gray shawl, eyes darting around like a trapped bird. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she stepped closer. "Can we talk?" I kept my hands busy, sliding a book back into place. "I'm on the clock." Her voice dropped, pleading. "I'm your mother." I met her gaze, calm and steady. "No, you were Melissa's mother. I was just someone you raised to be quiet." Her lips trembled. "Melissa's not doing well. She lost her house. Her friends. She's drinking a lot." I felt a pang somewhere deep, but I shoved it aside. "She did that to herself." Mom's eyes glistened. "We lost our reputation because of you." I tilted my head. "You lost your mask." She softened her voice, sliding closer. "Ethan deserves to know his aunt. Family is family. Claire." I stared at her for a long moment, thinking of Ethan's voice in the motel. I thought of the way he'd cried, curled into himself, whispering apologies for being 5 years old. Finally, I said, "You know what Ethan said when I told him Melissa couldn't see him anymore?" She blinked, wary. "What?" He said, "Good. I don't want the spoon lady near me." Mom's face twisted as if I'd slapped her. For a split second, I saw the woman who used to slam doors and scream that I was lucky to have a roof over my head. But I didn't flinch. I simply turned back to the shelves. A week later, a letter arrived at my apartment. The handwriting was unmistakable. Melissa's. "I forgive you. Claire, I hope one day you'll forgive me too. Losing my license was too extreme. I'm still your sister." I stared at the paper for a long time. Then I picked up a pen and wrote one line. "Forgiveness without accountability is just manipulation in makeup." I mailed it without a return address. But the story didn't end there. A few months after that, the school district reached out. Someone had shared my court testimony. They wanted me to speak at the annual Parent Safety Conference. I stood on a stage in a borrowed navy blazer, palms sweating, lights glaring down at me. I told a room full of strangers that sometimes the people we love most are the ones who hurt us deepest, and that protecting your child even from your own family is never betrayal. Afterward, a woman approached me, eyes shining. "You gave me courage to leave my brother's house. He hit my son, too." I hugged her so tight I thought we'd both break. A few weeks later, A nonprofit offered me a job running a small grant program for survivors of family violence. I said yes. I founded the Ethan Project, a center where kids could talk about abuse without fear, anonymously, safely, protected. We helped families find lawyers, therapists, housing, hope. On the day we opened our new building, the mayor handed me giant silver scissors for the ribbon cutting. Ethan stood beside me in a little suit and red tie, beaming like the sun. As cameras flashed, I whispered in his ear, "Look how far we've come." "Baby," he grinned. "We're superheroes now, Mommy." My eyes filled with tears. Not of grief, but gratitude. Because survival wasn't about revenge. It was about building a future where no child ever believed love meant pain. I turned to the crowd and spoke the truth I'd carved out of my own scars. Family is not just blood. Family is who keeps you safe. And silence never protects the people we love. It only protects the people who hurt them. People clapped. Cameras clicked. Ethan squeezed my hand so hard it made me laugh. In that moment, I realized something I wanted every person to know. Your past doesn't have to define your future. Silence doesn't have to be your legacy. And sometimes, the bravest thing you'll ever do is speak. As the applause finally faded, I stood there under the bright spring sun, the ribbon fluttering at my feet, feeling the weight of the past slip further away with each passing second. The mayor shook my hand, leaning in close. "You're an inspiration, Claire. This city is lucky to have you." I smiled, still trying to believe this was real. 2 years ago, I was sobbing in a motel room, counting coins, terrified that I'd lose my son. Now I was standing here, opening a place built to protect kids like Ethan, kids who deserve to feel safe. A gentle breeze rustled the banners overhead, carrying the scent of fresh-cut grass and blooming flowers. Ethan tugged at my sleeve, his small voice rising over the crowd. "Mommy, does this mean no more scary people?" I bent down, meeting his eyes level. "It means, if there are scary people, we know how to keep them away, and we know how to speak up." He nodded solemnly, as if I'd handed him some sacred truth. I glanced toward the back of the crowd and saw her standing there. Mom, alone, not beside Melissa, not surrounded by friends, just watching. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. Her eyes were shadowed and distant, like she was trying to calculate if this was all some mistake. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger looking at her. I felt nothing, because I'd finally realized she was just a woman too. Flawed. Scared. Raised on the same lies about family loyalty and keeping secrets. But I wasn't going to let her silence define me anymore. Melissa never showed her face at the ceremony. In some twisted way, I was grateful for that. Because that day wasn't about her. It was about every child who'd ever been told. It's not a big deal, while they nursed bruises hidden under long sleeves. It was about kids like Ethan, who deserved to laugh without fear. And about people like me, who'd finally learned that love doesn't mean tolerating pain. After the speeches ended, I wandered through the new center, running my fingers over the fresh paint on the walls. Posters lined the hallway, colorful drawings, slogans about speaking up, words like courage and hope painted in bright letters. I stepped into my office and stared at the plaque on my door. Claire Watson, Director, The Ethan Project. I pressed my hand to the cool metal, letting pride and peace wash over me. I thought back to the motel, the neon flicker, Ethan trembling beside me. I remembered thinking we'd never survive. But we did, and we became more than survivors. We became builders, builders of safe places, of new chances, of futures where fear no longer ruled. Outside, Ethan's laughter rang through the hallway as he played tag with 2 other kids. That sound, pure, unburdened joy, was worth every sleepless night, every courtroom battle, every tear I'd shed, because he was free. And so was I. As I stood in the doorway, watching him run, I felt compelled to share one last truth for anyone who might still be trapped in silence. Sometimes family is the danger, and sometimes love means walking away, even if it breaks your heart. I've learned that the people who deserve to stay in your life are the ones who choose to protect you, not the ones who demand your silence. I've learned that secrets fester, and only truth sets you free. I've learned that kids are always worth fighting for, even if the fight costs you everything. And above all, I've learned that forgiveness without accountability is just another lie people tell to keep you quiet. So if you're listening to this, if you're watching and wondering whether to speak up, hear me now. Your voice matters. Your life matters. And it's never too late to choose yourself. And the ones you love? I looked out the window, feeling the sun warm my face, and whispered words I wanted, etched into every soul who'd ever felt small. You survived. And that's what matters. Not revenge, not payback, but rising from the fire and refusing to let it consume you. And as Ethan's laughter echoed around me, I finally believed it.